Okay, so it's time for us to go ahead and get back into our coverage over Excalibur. All right, so this could be our last video for a while when it comes to the actual team, when it comes to our coverage over Excalibur. And let me explain why. You see, in the late 1990s, for Marvel Comics, they were trying to rebound themselves. And what I mean by that statement is really more get back on track because in the early 1990s, they were on fire. Like all their different properties were most of the time selling. New Warriors, X-Men, Spider-Man, the Avengers, like everything was working. Even new things popping up like a new Ghost Rider as well. But then the mid 90s came where only X-Men and Spider-Man were selling, and then maybe Blade and the Midnight Suns and Ghost Rider and Venom, they were selling over there as well. But for some other big names like Iron Man, Thor, the Avengers, Captain America, they were kind of struggling. And so by the late 1990s, it was really Marvel trying to get everything back on track. And when it came to the X-Men, and I kind of realized this as well as we're working through our reading order that the late 1990s, it was just Marvel trying their best to kind of keep the X-Men ship afloat because it was their big cash cow besides Spider-Man. And so in the late 1990s, that ship began to sink a tad bit where we see the end of Excalibur, we see the end of X-Factor, we begin to see the end of X-Force as well, but that goes into the early 2000s at least. And you then had Marvel begin to do a whole lot of shakeups when it came to all the different X properties. And this is not me trying to bash the 90s fans out there. I know you guys love my content because of me covering the 1990s. It's just me kind of pointing out what exactly happened when it came to, Marvel Comics. And so when it comes to Excalibur, they did a good job of kind of sending the team off with the idea of the marriage of, well, Captain Britain and Meggan. And really, this has been a work for a while when it came to our coverage over the X-Men, but like the way to end Excalibur is to use their wedding day as a way to send the team off and kind of begin the process of shuffling characters around. And really, it's also Marvel saying, like, hey, because we're trying to wrap everything up, let's go ahead and use some old ideas in this book as well. Like, for example, the idea of Crazy Gang. Now, Crazy Gang wasn't really anything popular when it came to Marvel Comics, but it was the idea that you had Jim Jasper, this reality warping character, being able to create allies for himself, aka the Crazy Gang. Now, after they were created, they stayed in Great Britain and kind of became that random super villain team that would just pop up out of nowhere from those craziest stories in Excalibur, but also other books as well. Now, we have not seen Crazy Gang in a very long time. And the reason why, because they were staying in this like pocket dimension, Alice in Wonderland area. And they told the heroes, like, we are done being villains. We are done like being these bad guys to you heroes. But then in the opening pages, they're like, hey, we want to get revenge. But then somebody appears and says, I'm your new leader and I'm going to help you get your revenge against your enemies. Of course, being Excalibur. But this kind of leads us into the current problem we have right now in Excalibur, the idea of Colossus and Meggan. You see, when it came to Captain Britain, he lost his powers. And then he said, hey guys, I'll be back. I need to find myself. When I do come back, Meggan, I hope we can pick up where we left off at and actually get married. But while he was gone, Colossus and Meggan began to build a relationship with one another. And not really at first in that way. It was kind of like a friendship. The problem was she began to fall in love with Colossus. She had a crush on him. And because for Meggan, she's trying her best to understand how emotions work, the idea that she had a crush on some other man besides Captain Britain is really breaking her heart. And so for Colossus, he's kind of like, I should tell Captain Britain about the crush that Meggan had on me before he goes off and marries her, but not trying to ruin their relationship, but more kind of like, hey, listen, She did have, a crush on me, but I wasn't trying to make a move on your wife or future wife at all. Now, it's also the night for the bachelorette party and the bachelor party as well. And Nightcrawler is the best man. Good job, Nightcrawler. But yeah, for Megan, it's really more of her kind of struggling with the idea of like, what should she do when it comes to Captain Britain? Should she tell him about the idea that she had a crush on Colossus? Now, of course, when he does walk into the bathroom and sees her and hugs her and all that, he can still kind of tell that there's something wrong with her and he wants to, well, help her. But unfortunately, he can't at the moment. Now, when it comes to Megan's bachelorette party, when it comes to her bachelorette party, we do see they got Mormon Taggart. You also got Wolfbane, Kitty Pryde, but you also have a character who I did not really expect to see, and that would be Linda McQuillan. Now, for Linda, she's from Earth 238, and she's the Captain Britain in that reality. Now, she met our Captain Britain a while back, but I'm just shocked to see her. And I guess for me, it's the reason why, because when she did appear in comics, it was prior to where we started our X-Men coverage at, and she not really popped up that many times when it came to our coverage over the X-Men, but she is there. Now, for Mormon Taggart, she knows that Megan really wants to tell Brian about like her crush on Colossus and kind of wondering how should she do it. But like, what could it feel like if she does lose the man she loves? And she wants to ask Kitty Pryde that question because Kitty Pryde just lost her boyfriend, better known as Pete Wisdom. Now, for the guys, they're also there in the big manor that belongs to Brian Braddock on the other side having their bachelor party. I find this funny because you have Doug Locke, being like, oh, I can't get drunk, but you know what? I love this alcohol, but it makes me want to consume more. And you have Doug Locke just taking more and more alcohol. And the dude unfortunately does pass out right there. Now we also get reminded that Mimic is here as well, because in the last story arc, you had Excalibur save him from the Prime Sentinel's facility. And so he's kind of part of the team, but I guess like the book is ending. So will he be around? Who knows? But either way, you have Nightcrawler, Colossus, Brian, Mimic, and also Doug Locke. I think I already said Doug Locke. But anyways, that's the group right there for the bachelor party. But for Crazy Gang, they're sneaking around the actual home of Brian Braddock. Now, we still have no idea who this new leader is, but we can kind of tell he's getting very annoyed by the way Crazy Gang truly works. Now I'm going to go ahead and skip forward a couple of pages. Here's the reason why. Because really, one page is really more just Megan kind of going over to Kitty Pryde to ask her, like, what should she do? And it's Kitty Pryde saying, like, girl, I know what it's like to lose somebody. So why not go ahead and tell the man what you technically did? And even though it was a crush, you should go ahead and tell him before you possibly lose him. Do it for yourself at least. Now, I want to switch over to Colossus. Here's the reason why. Because Colossus is going to lie to Captain Britain. You see, for Colossus, he tells Captain Britain the exact opposite. Instead of telling him like, hey, listen, it was Megan who had a crush on me, it's Colossus saying, oh, Brian, I need to tell you right now, I fell in love with Megan while you were gone. And for Captain Britain, he's kind of like, oh, really? You know what? Let me just put this pipe down real quick. And so the rest of this chapter, it's really more of us just seeing, Excalibur getting surprised by Crazy Gang. The Bachelorette party, they're being confronted by all the main original members of the Crazy Gang. And when it comes to the Bachelors, well, while they're chilling in their part of the room or house, whatever, they're confronted by this brand new leader of Crazy Gang. Now, you do have the men being able to work together to figure out who is this new leader and why in the world does he want revenge against Excalibur? And this character is, he was part of the team for a very short period of time, maybe like 10 or 15 issues, and that was technically it. And that would be Feron. Okay, so for Feron, he was this character that came literally out of nowhere. It was the idea that he was raised by a few monks to kind of get ready to become the next host of the Phoenix to fight against a character known as Necrom. Here's the problem though. When it came to Feron, when he believed it was his time to finally shine and become the next host of the Phoenix and use the power to fight against Necrom, it didn't happen. And the reason why? Because of Rachel Summers. Because in the late 80s and the early 1990s, she was the Phoenix. And so because she was the Phoenix, he was not allowed to become the next host of the Phoenix. And it really did upset him a lot. Now for Rachel, she was still able to get rid of Necrom. And matter of fact, when it came to Feron, he stayed with Excalibur. Here comes the downfall part though, because when it came to Captain Britain, he was lost in time. And so for Excalibur, they believed that Captain Britain was possibly gone forever. And for Meggan, it really did hurt her a lot to lose the man she loved, to the point where she was unable to eat, sleep, or do anything at all. She stayed in one particular spot because for Meggan, she's not really able to handle her own emotions. And so when it came to Feron, we had thought he had just disappeared and that was it. That was not the case. What happened was when it came to Feron, when he tried to use his magic as a way to make Meggan happy, he was literally connected to her. And once that happened, he began to pick up her shape-shifting abilities. And because he was near water, his whole entire body turned into water. And so because of that, he was literally drained away. He was just water out there in the world for the longest time until he was able to learn how to somewhat control his new abilities that he had gained from Meggan to bring himself back into his human form. Once he did all that, he's kind of like, I want revenge against Excalibur. But you didn't have Excalibur say, that makes no sense. And honestly, I agree with him because it's the idea of you disappeared. And the thing is, the reason why he's so upset with Excalibur, because he began to feel like he was a nobody, because he was supposed to become the next host of the Phoenix. And then also the fact that when he disappeared, nobody came looking for him. He felt like he was a nobody to Excalibur. But they tell him all like, dude, you are a somebody to us. Because you technically disappeared, we had no idea how to contact you or what exactly happened to you. So you have to understand like where we're coming from. And so once he realized that Excalibur still cares for him, you didn't have him celebrate the idea that they do care for him and they want him around for the big day between Meggan and also Brian Braddock. But while you have everyone now just celebrating, having a good old time, Brian does take the hand of Meggan to walk away to have a private conversation. But then we transition over to Excalibur issue number 125. And when we do, we kind of go through this huge transition where it's now time for the wedding. So we're kind of left to wonder like, okay, how did the conversation go between Brian and Meggan? But we can kind of tell that it had to go great because we do pick up with Douglock. Now, for Douglock, he's waking up after, drinking a whole lot of alcohol. And when he does wake up, he's confronted by Widget. Now, I'm not going to sit down and try to re-explain who Widget is because in the last chapter for the Excalibur series, they brought back a bunch of old characters. If I sat down here and tried to explain every single character that does pop up, we'll be here for like 2 hours, guys. But anyways, when it comes to Widget, he teleports Douglock over to Otherworld for the big time wedding. Except when you have Douglock arrive at the wedding and you didn't have Nightcrawler being able to give Douglock his outfit because he is a groomsman, we kind of get the idea that he does not remember anything about his entire life because then Wolfbane appears. And when she does appear, it basically reminds us that for Wolfbane, she's very upset with Douglock and she's trying her best to forgive him. And the reason why she is so upset because when it came to Douglock in an earlier storyline, we found out that he had a crush on Wolfbane, right? Now for Wolfbane, she also had a crush on him as well, but she tried her best to be with her mother because Moira McTaggart decided that she would lock herself away until she was able to find a cure cure for the virus. Wolfbane, at the very last second, jumped into that room as the door closed, and of course, she was now also locked away with her mother. Now, for Douglock, he could not stand the idea of losing the girl he loved, and so he went out of his way to reopen the doors, which of course ruined the whole idea of Moira McTaggart self-containing herself. But so for Wolfbane, she believes that for Douglock, what he did was kind of help speed up the process of the possibility of Moira McTaggart dying, because Moira McTaggart also has the legacy virus. She needs the cure to technically stay alive. But when they arrive at the wedding, it's her saying like, I'm trying my best to forgive you. But for Douglock, he has no idea what she's even talking about. But when they do arrive, we technically kick off the idea of the ceremony, right? So you have everyone begin to walk down. We see some other characters there as well, like Shiraz and Amanda and Kai Lun, like other characters who were technically part of Excalibur, but some of these characters did not really spend that much time with the entire team though. But anyways, we get the idea that you had a lot of different people who are close to Excalibur be invited to the wedding. And also the fact that you have different members of the Captain Britain Corps also there as well, because all these different Captain Britons from different realities are also there as well. It's a huge moment for our Captain Britain and Meggan. Now, we also see Colossus and Kitty Pryde walk down the aisle together as bridesmaid and groomsmen, and honestly kind of hinting at the possibility of the two characters getting back together. But then it's kind of like, wait, how did the conversation go between Brian and also Meggan? Now, when it comes to Captain Britain, it's really more of him kind of telling us that he understood what happened between between Colossus and Meggan. One, he tells us that he knows that Colossus had technically lied when it came to the idea of him loving Meggan, but in reality, it was Meggan who had a crush on Colossus. And so when it comes to Captain Britain, it's him saying, I understand what happened. I left. And there was no actual possibility of me coming back. I said I was, but who knew what could possibly happen to me? And you had the guy around you the entire time who was protecting you in your corner, wanting to help you. And so, of course, it makes sense that over time, the two of y'all would possibly begin to build something. Now, for Colossus, that was not the case. But for Meggan, who's still somebody trying to understand how emotions work, is him saying like, I understand. But at the same time, I'm back now. And I saw what happened. As soon as I came back, you came back to me. So I knew even then that you were not technically going to leave me for this other guy, because I love you and I trust you, and I know you love me and trust me back. Bam, cool. Now back to the present day. And so now we're seeing the wedding come together, right? We see Nightcrawler pull a very last second, like, I call it teleporting joke, like, oh, he pretended that he forgot in the ring because to teleport somewhere else to get the ring. But in reality, we already know the dude most likely had the ring on him. But you do have the whole entire process go through, and we do see the two couples, or characters, sorry, not couples, the two characters come together to kiss. And just like that, Brian Braddock and Meggan are officially married. But this kind of leads into the idea of the post-ceremony celebration. You know, the idea that when the groom and the bride throw their things back in the air, whoever catches it, those two people come together. So for example, Kitty Pryde is the one who is able to catch the flowers, while you do have Colossus be the one to catch the garter. And the thing is, in some culture, if you're the guy who catches the garter, you're then supposed to put the garter on the lady who caught the flowers' leg. And so for Colossus, he has to put it on Kitty Pryde's leg. And that's the thing right there, because they used to be a couple. And that door right now is slowly being reopened of the possibility of the two of them getting back together, even though you have Kitty Pryde say, nah, it ain't gonna happen. And so now I'm going to skip to the end of the book, right? And this is the reason why, because this is where we're going to end Excalibur. And most of the things that happen in this particular book, they don't really get brought up in later books. And if they do, it's easy for me to kind of just do a quick rundown in those videos, because now we can skip over to, well, the idea of Nightcrawler informing Brian and also Meggan they're not coming back. Like, they're saying, hey, listen, it's best for Nightcrawler, Kitty Pryde, and Colossus to rejoin the X-Men back in America. And the reason why, because one, to find Charles Xavier, but to also have the chance to carry on Charles Xavier's dream. And the best way to do that is to be with the rest of the X-Men team. Now, for Nightcrawler, Kitty Pryde, and for Colossus, they have no idea who had officially joined the X-Men by this point. But either way, they're going back home. And so the door is kind of left open for Captain Britain to kind of be the leader for Excalibur, but also the idea of possibly putting together his own team to lead in the future. Now, while you do have the entire team say their goodbyes to one another and they go back inside to finish the good old celebration, we then pick up with Lady Roma and also Merlin. And it's really more Merlin and Roma kind of wondering, like, are they truly responsible for the idea of Excalibur disbanding? Now, it's also them kind of saying, like, no. And the reason why, because the idea of Excalibur is like a sword. It has already been drawn, meaning that it's already put out there for battle. And so for Excalibur, even though the team is technically disbanding, there's always going to be a time where Excalibur is going to be needed. And these heroes will come back together again to bring us Excalibur to help save the day. But for now, this is goodbye to Excalibur. And honestly, for me, makes it a tad bit easier to cover when it comes to covering the X-Men. With that being said, guys, please leave me a like down below and subscribe. But guys, see y'all next time. Later.